The leather-bound diary trembled in my hands as I flipped through its pages, each one filled with detailed accounts of my brother's manipulations. I'd forgotten I'd even kept this record, buried deep in a box of childhood memories. But here it was, proof that I wasn't crazy, that Rohan's perfect image was nothing but a carefully crafted illusion. My name is Roslyn, and for 32 years I've lived in the shadow of my younger brother. 3 days ago, he managed to ruin what should have been the happiest day of my life. Now, sitting in my home office, surrounded by scattered wedding photos, I finally understand that enough is enough. "You need to see this," I said into my phone, my voice shaking. "Vanessa, remember all those times you told me I should keep receipts?" "I'm on my way." My best friend replied without hesitation, "Don't do anything until I get there." While waiting, I stared at a particular wedding photo. The moment everything fell apart. There was Rohan, microphone in hand, his heartfelt speech slurring into a drunken tirade about how I'd always been jealous of him, how I'd tried to steal his spotlight by getting married on the weekend before his big promotion announcement. The doorbell rang and I practically ran to let Vanessa in. She took one look at my face and wrapped me in a tight hug. "Show me," she said, following me to the office. I handed her the diary. "Start with the entry from July 15th, 7 years ago." Vanessa's eyes widened as she read. "Holy shit, Roz. He actually sabotaged your college scholarship application?" "Keep reading." She flipped through more pages, her expression growing darker. "The lost acceptance letter to grad school. The misunderstanding with your first boyfriend? Roz, this is systematic." "And nobody ever believed me," I said, sinking into my desk chair. "Mom always said I was being dramatic, that I was imagining things because I was jealous of his success." The phone rang, Mom's number flashing on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. "She's probably calling to tell me I need to apologize to Rohan for ruining his moment at my own wedding," I said bitterly. Vanessa set down the diary and grabbed my shoulders. "Listen to me. Your brother is a narcissistic manipulator who's gotten away with everything because your mother enabled him, but you're not powerless anymore." "What do you mean?" "Antonio mentioned Rohan just started at his firm, right? Under Deacon Wagner?" I nodded slowly, beginning to see where she was going. "And this diary, it's not just about personal stuff. There are details about business deals, about money he's borrowed and never repaid, about lies he's told to advance his career." My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Roslyn, please call me. Your brother is devastated. Why can't you just be happy for him?" Something snapped inside me. I grabbed the diary and started typing furiously on my laptop. "What are you doing?" Vanessa asked. "Making copies," I said, scanning page after page. "Digital backup. If I'm going to do this, I need to be smart about it." "Do what exactly?" I looked up at her, feeling more certain than I had in years. "Take back my life. Show everyone who Rohan really is. Not with drama or accusations, with cold, hard evidence." The doorbell rang again. Through the window, I saw Rohan's expensive car in my driveway. "Perfect timing," I muttered, quickly hiding the diary in my desk drawer. "He's probably here to gloat about his promotion." Vanessa squeezed my hand. "Remember, you're not crazy, you're not jealous, and you're not alone." I took a deep breath and headed for the door, my brother's shadow looming through the frosted glass. For the first time, I didn't feel small beneath it. The diary's weight in my desk drawer felt like armor, like ammunition, like hope. "Coming," I called out, my voice steady despite my racing heart. As I reached for the doorknob, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. Straight spine, lifted chin, eyes clear and determined. The woman staring back at me wasn't a victim anymore. It was time for Rohan to learn that some shadows bite back. Opening the door, I plastered on my best fake smile. "Rohan, what a surprise." He breezed past me into the house, oozing confidence in his tailored suit. "Sister dearest, I need a favor." "Of course you do." I caught Vanessa's eye as she lingered in the hallway, silently witnessing. "I'm presenting to the board next week," Rohan said, making himself comfortable on my couch. Antonio mentioned you're good with PowerPoint. I need you to polish up my presentation. I sat across from him, noting how he hadn't even acknowledged Vanessa's presence. When's the presentation? Monday morning. I'll email you the files tonight. That's in 3 days. He shrugged. Shouldn't take you more than a few hours, unless you're too busy with, whatever it is you do all day. Vanessa cleared her throat loudly. I should get going, Roz. Call me later? I nodded, grateful for the meaningful look she gave me before leaving. Once the door closed, Rohan leaned forward. About the wedding. He started. Don't. Come on, sis. I was just trying to lighten the mood. Everyone was so serious. I pulled out my phone and played a video. His drunken voice filled the room. My sister always wanted what I had. Always trying to steal my thunder. Even had to schedule her wedding right before my big announcement. Rohan waved dismissively. Water under the bridge. Mom says I should forgive you. Forgive me? I fought to keep my voice steady. You know what? I'll help with your presentation. Email it over. His face lit up. I knew I could count on you. This is huge for me. Deacon's watching this presentation closely. After he left, I called Antonio at work. Hey, love. Quick question about Rohan's new position. Let me guess. He asked you for help with the board presentation? How'd you know? Because he's been bragging about having a secret weapon to nail it. I assumed he meant you. I gripped the phone tighter. What exactly is this presentation about? Some new investment strategy he's proposing. Why? Just curious. Love you. I hung up and immediately called Vanessa. Remember that sketchy investment scheme Rohan ran in college? The one he blamed on his roommate? The one that got that poor kid expelled? It's all in your diary. Exactly. I think he's about to do something similar at Antonio's firm. He needs my help with the presentation. Perfect, Vanessa said. This is our chance. What's the plan? I opened my laptop. First, I'm going to help him make the most beautiful professional presentation he's ever seen. And then I'm going to anonymously send Deacon Wagner proof that Rohan's brilliant investment strategy is actually a recycled scam. Roz. Vanessa's voice turned serious. This could destroy his career, like he destroyed Marcus's life in college, or Sarah's reputation at his last job. I pulled out the diary. It's all here, Vanessa. Every scheme, every lie, every person he's stepped on to get ahead. My phone buzzed. An email from Rohan with the presentation attached. It's time someone stopped him, I said, opening the file. Before he hurts anyone else. I worked through the night, making his slides impeccable. Every animation perfect, every transition smooth, every graphic professional. By morning, I had 2 versions ready. The one I'd send to Rohan and one with subtle modifications that would raise red flags to anyone who knew what to look for. The next day, I walked into Antonio's firm during lunch hour. The receptionist knew me as Antonio's wife and waved me through. I found Deacon's office easily. Corner suite, name on the door. Mrs. Ellis. He looked up from his desk. What brings you here? Mr. Wagner, I need to show you something. It's about Rohan. He gestured to a chair. Your brother's been quite impressive so far. I'm sure he has. I pulled out a USB drive. But before his presentation on Monday, you should see this. Deacon's expression grew increasingly grave as he reviewed the documents. These allegations are serious. They're not allegations, they're facts. Every document is dated, every transaction recorded. I've been keeping track for years. He studied me carefully. Why come forward now? Because this time, he's not just hurting me or some college kid. He's putting your firm at risk. I stood up. What you do with this information is up to you. But I couldn't live with myself if I stayed silent. Walking out of Deacon's office, I felt lighter than I had in years. My phone buzzed. A text from Rohan. Got the presentation. It's perfect. I owe you one, sis. No, I whispered to myself. I owe you. Pass the potatoes, darling, Mom said to Rohan, beaming at him across the Sunday dinner table. Tell us more about your big presentation tomorrow. I pushed my food around my plate, watching the familiar scene unfold. Mom had insisted on this family dinner, claiming we needed to heal and move forward as a family. Well, Rohan started, helping himself to a third serving. I've developed this revolutionary investment strategy. The board's going to love it. He winked at me. Thanks to my sister's help with the visuals, of course. That's wonderful. Mom clasped her hands together. You two working together, just like when you were little? Remember how you used to help him with his homework, Roslyn? I remember him taking credit for my book report in 8th grade, I muttered. Mom's face fell. Not this again. Why do you always have to bring up ancient history? Because history tends to repeat itself, I said, louder this time. Rohan laughed, that practiced, charismatic laugh that always worked on people. Come on, sis. You're not still upset about the wedding, are you? I apologized. Did you? I must have missed it between your self-congratulations. Roslyn. Mom snapped. Your brother has a huge day tomorrow. Can't you just be supportive for once? I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. I need some air. In the kitchen, I gripped the counter, taking deep breaths. Through the door, I could hear their conversation continue. Poor Roslyn, Mom sighed. She's always been so sensitive. It's fine, Rohan replied. She'll come around when the deal goes through. Speaking of which, I should tell you about this investor I met. I moved closer to the door, listening intently. Sorry. Completely off the books, of course. Once we get the board's approval tomorrow, I'll route the initial investments through a shell company. Double the returns in 6 months guaranteed. My hand flew to my mouth. He was actually planning to do it. The exact same scheme from college, but on a much larger scale. I don't understand all these financial terms, Mom said proudly. But I know you'll do wonderfully, sweetheart. My phone vibrated. A text from Deacon. Need to speak with you first thing tomorrow, 8 a.m. Everything okay in here? Antonio appeared in the doorway, having just arrived from his weekend shift. I quickly composed myself. Just getting dessert ready. He wrapped his arms around me from behind. You seem tense. Family dinners have that effect. Ah, there's my favorite brother-in-law. Rohan's voice boomed as he entered the kitchen. Listen, about tomorrow's presentation. Actually, Antonio interrupted. I'm not supposed to be involved in your department's projects. Conflict of interest. Rohan's smile flickered. Right. Of course. He turned to me. Sis, got a minute? He led me to the back porch, closing the door behind us. The evening air was thick with humidity. I need you to do me another favor, he said, dropping his voice. If anyone at the firm asks about my previous work experience, what about it? Just say I handled all the investments for Dad's estate after he died. It adds credibility. I stared at him. Dad left everything to Mom. You know that. Yeah, but who's going to check? Come on, Roz. This is my shot at the big leagues. A memory flashed. Dad in his hospital bed, making me promise to look after Rohan, to help him succeed. If only he'd known. No, I said quietly. What? I said no. I won't lie for you anymore. His face darkened. After everything I've done for you? Everything you've done for me? I laughed incredulously. Name one thing, Rohan. One single thing you've done that wasn't ultimately for your own benefit. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Be very careful, sister dear. You wouldn't want Antonio finding out about that little visit you paid to Deacon, would you? My blood ran cold. How did you... I have friends everywhere. He smiled, all teeth and threat. So let's stick to the script, shall we? For the family's sake. The back door opened and Mom poked her head out. Dessert's ready. Are you two having a nice chat? The nicest, Rohan said, his mask sliding perfectly back into place. Roslyn was just agreeing to help me with a few more details for tomorrow. As we headed back inside, my phone buzzed again. Vanessa. Everything set for tomorrow? I typed back quickly. More than ever. Looking up, I caught my reflection in the kitchen window. My face set with determination, Dad's eyes staring back at me. I had made him a promise to look after Rohan. Yes, but maybe this was exactly how I needed to keep it. I arrived at Deacon's office at 7:55 a.m., my heart pounding against my ribs. Through the glass walls, I could see him already at his desk, reviewing what looked like my documents. "Come in," he called when I knocked. "Close the door." I sat down, noting the dark circles under his eyes. He'd clearly been up all night with my evidence. "I verified everything you showed me," he said, tapping a thick folder. "The college scandal, the incident at his previous firm, the pattern of financial manipulation. It's all true." "Yes." "And you're willing to go on record with this?" I took a deep breath. "I am." "Even though he's your brother? Even though it could impact your husband's position here?" "Antonio doesn't know," I admitted. "But Rohan needs to be stopped. Last night at dinner, I overheard him talking about routing investments through shell companies." Deacon leaned forward. "Tell me exactly what you heard." For the next 20 minutes, I detailed Rohan's conversation, watching Deacon's expression grow increasingly grim. "The board meeting is in 2 hours," he said finally. "I've already alerted our compliance team. They'll be watching the presentation carefully. What happens then?" "That depends on what we find." He paused. "You should know, if this goes the way I expect, there will be legal implications. Are you prepared for that?" Before I could answer, voices approached the office. Through the glass, I saw Rohan walking with 2 board members, gesturing animatedly. I ducked down instinctively. "Use my private exit," Deacon said quickly, pointing to a side door. "And Mrs. Ellis, thank you for coming forward." I slipped out just as Rohan's laugh echoed through the main office. In the elevator, my phone rang. "Vanessa." "I'm outside," she said. "How did it go?" I met her in her car, parked around the corner. "They're moving forward with the investigation. The board meeting's in 2 hours." "Are you staying?" "I have to." I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Mom. "I need to see this through." Vanessa handed me a coffee. "Then I'm staying too. We can watch from the cafe across the street." The next 2 hours crawled by. We sat by the cafe window, watching people enter the building. Mom called twice more. "You should answer," Vanessa said. "She'll just keep calling." I picked up on the next ring. "Hi, Mom." "Where are you? Rohan's been trying to reach you. He needs your help with some last-minute changes to his presentation." "I'm busy." "Busy? This is your brother's big moment. How can you be so selfish?" The familiar guilt twisted in my stomach, but I pushed it down. "I have to go, Mom." "Wait, just tell me, did you talk to anyone at the firm about your brother's work history?" My hand tightened on the phone. "What?" "Someone's been asking questions. Rohan's worried you might have said something to cause trouble." "Goodbye, Mom." I hung up as a flurry of activity caught my eye. Through the cafe window, I saw several serious-looking people entering the building. "That's the compliance team," I said. "It's starting." Vanessa squeezed my hand. "Are you okay?" "No." I watched another group enter, police officers in plain clothes. "But I will be." My phone buzzed with a text from Antonio. "Why are there investigators in Rohan's presentation?" Before I could respond, another message came through. From Rohan. "What did you do?" "We should go," Vanessa said, watching my face. "Not yet." Through the window, we saw people beginning to leave the building. Some were walking quickly, phones pressed to their ears. Others stood in groups, talking in hushed voices. Then Rohan emerged, flanked by 2 officers. Even from across the street, I could see his face was ashen. Behind him, Deacon was speaking with more officials. My phone exploded with notifications, Mom calling, Antonio texting, unknown numbers. "Now we can go," I said quietly. As Vanessa drove away, I caught a final glimpse of Rohan in the rearview mirror. He was looking around wildly, probably searching for me. Our eyes met for a split second before the car turned the corner. "What now?" Vanessa asked. "Now we wait." I turned off my phone. The truth has a way of snowballing once it starts rolling. "Are you ready for the avalanche?" I thought about the diary, safely stored with copies at my lawyer's office. About Dad's last wish. About years of manipulation and gaslighting. "I've been ready for years," I said. "I just didn't know it until now." The car radio crackled with breaking news about potential fraud at a major investment firm. I closed my eyes, letting the words wash over me. There would be chaos ahead. Family drama, legal battles, probably years of aftermath. But for the first time in my life, I felt clean. Free. Real. The pounding on my front door started at 6 a.m. I'd been awake already, sitting in the dark, waiting for the storm I knew was coming. "Roslyn, open this door right now." Mom's voice carried through the house. I took a slow sip of coffee before walking to the door. When I opened it, Mom burst in, her face streaked with tears and fury. "How could you?" she demanded. "Your own brother is in custody. They're investigating him for fraud." "I know." "You know? That's all you have to say?" She grabbed my arms. "Fix this. Tell them you made a mistake." I gently removed her hands. "I can't do that." "Can't or won't?" "Both." I walked to the kitchen, Mom following close behind. "Everything in those documents is true. You know it is." "He's your brother." "Yes, and that's exactly why I had to stop him." I turned to face her. "Do you know what happened to his college roommate? The one he framed for his first investment scam? That was a misunderstanding. Marcus killed himself, Mom, 6 months after being expelled. I found out last year." She sank into a kitchen chair. "You're lying." "I have the news articles, the police reports, everything." My phone buzzed. "Antonio." "Coming home early. We need to talk." "Does Antonio know what you've done?" Mom demanded. "He's about to." As if on cue, the front door opened. Antonio walked in, still in his work clothes, his face unreadable. "I'll give you two some privacy," Mom said, standing. "No," Antonio said firmly. "You should stay for this." He turned to me. "The firm's in chaos. Deacon's been in meetings all night. They found evidence of fraud going back months." "I know." "You knew?" His voice cracked. "You knew and you didn't tell me?" "I couldn't. You would have been implicated." "I'm implicated anyway." He ran his hands through his hair. "They're questioning everyone who had contact with him, including me." "But you didn't know anything," Mom interjected. "This is all Roslyn's fault. She—" A sharp knock interrupted her. Through the window, I saw 2 police officers. "Mrs. Ellis?" one called out. "We need to ask you some questions about your brother's financial activities." Mom grabbed my arm. "Don't you dare say a word." "Actually," I said, moving toward the door, "I have quite a lot to say." The next 2 hours were a blur of questions and documents. The officers took notes as I explained everything. The pattern of fraud, the threats, the manipulation. Mom sat silent, shaking her head occasionally. Antonio paced. When the officers finally left, the silence was deafening. "I kept records," I said quietly, "of everything, since we were teenagers." "Why didn't you tell me?" Antonio asked. "Because I needed you to be innocent in this. And—" I swallowed hard. "I wasn't sure you'd believe me. No one ever did. I would have believed you." He stopped pacing. "I'm your husband." My phone rang. "Deacon." "Your brother's asking to speak with you," he said when I answered. "He's with his lawyer." "No," I said firmly. "He says he has information about you, things that could hurt you." I laughed, the sound hollow. "Let him try. I'm done being afraid of his threats." After hanging up, I found Mom staring at me. "You've destroyed this family," she whispered. "No, Mom. The family was destroyed long ago. I'm just finally stopping the pretense." A text from Vanessa lit up my phone. News is breaking. Turn on the TV. I grabbed the remote, and there it was. Rohan's face on the screen, being led into court in handcuffs. The headline scrolled, "Investment fraud scheme uncovered. Multiple victims coming forward." Oh, God, Mom moaned. My phone started buzzing continuously. Journalists, old friends, distant relatives. Everyone wanted to know more. "I need some air," Antonio said, heading for the door. "Antonio, wait. I need time to process this." He paused. "I love you, but this is a lot." After he left, Mom stood up shakily. "I should go too. I need to find your brother a good lawyer." "Mom, don't." She held up her hand. "Just don't." As the door closed behind her, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. "Hello? Is this Roslyn?" A familiar voice. "This is Marcus's mother. I saw the news. I've been waiting years for someone to expose what really happened to my son." I sank onto the couch, tears finally breaking free. "I'm so sorry it took me so long." "No, dear," she said gently. "You're right on time." Through my tears, I watched Rohan's face on the muted TV screen. He looked scared, finally stripped of his mask. For the first time in my life, I saw him clearly. Not as my golden brother, not as my tormentor, but as someone who had finally run out of shadows to hide in. The courthouse corridor felt endless as I walked toward the conference room where Rohan waited. 2 weeks had passed since his arrest, and this was the first time I'd agreed to see him. "Remember," his lawyer said, stopping me at the door, "anything discussed here could be used in court." "I'm aware." Rohan sat at the table wearing an orange jumpsuit that seemed to drain all his usual confidence. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. "Hello, sister dear," he said, attempting his old smile. It didn't reach his eyes. I sat across from him, conscious of the guard by the door. "What do you want, Rohan?" "Can a brother just want to see his sister?" "Cut the act. You're facing serious charges. What do you want from me?" He leaned forward, dropping his voice. "You need to recant your statement." "No." "Listen to me," he hissed. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Mom's had to mortgage the house for my legal fees. Antonio's firm is under investigation. Your own husband might lose his job because of you." "Because of me?" I stood up so quickly my chair scraped against the floor. "Everything that's happening is because of you, Rohan. Your choices, your lies, your fraud." "Keep your voice down," his lawyer warned. "You want to talk about consequences?" I continued, quieter but intense. "Let's talk about Marcus, Sarah. Every person you've destroyed while climbing your way up." "They were weak," he spat. "They couldn't handle the real world." The guard shifted uncomfortably. "Marcus was 19, I said. "He had his whole life ahead of him before you framed him." "I didn't know he would kill himself?" "No, you never think about what happens to people after you're done using them, do you?" Rohan's facade cracked. "I can't go to prison, Roz. Please, I'm your little brother." For a moment, I saw him as he used to be. The little boy who'd crawl into my bed during thunderstorms before he learned to weaponize his charm. My phone buzzed. A text from Antonio. "In the parking lot when you're done. Love you." The message steadied me. After 3 days of sleeping in the guest room, Antonio had finally come home yesterday. We'd talked until dawn, painful but honest conversations about trust and family and truth. "You're right about one thing," I said to Rohan. "You are my little brother. That's why I had to stop you. Because if I didn't, you'd keep destroying lives until there was nothing left of you." "How noble," he sneered, mask back in place. "Always the martyr. You know what? Fine. But remember this. When I'm done here, I'm coming for you. Everything you love, everything you've built, it's gone." The guard stepped forward. "That's enough." I gathered my belongings, hands steady. "Goodbye, Rohan." "You can't just walk away," he shouted as I reached the door. "I made you. You were nothing before me. Nothing. His voice followed me down the corridor, growing more desperate with each echo. Outside, Antonio waited by his car. You okay? He asked, pulling me close. No, I admitted, but I will be. My phone rang. Deacon. The board just finished their emergency meeting, he said when I answered. They've decided to keep Antonio on. His position's secure. Relief flooded through me. Thank you. Don't thank me. His record speaks for itself, unlike your brother's. After hanging up, I turned to Antonio. You're safe. The firm's keeping you. He kissed my forehead. I never doubted it. I've got nothing to hide. Unlike some people, I murmured. Speaking of which, he nodded toward the parking lot entrance. Mom was walking toward us, looking older than I'd ever seen her. Roslyn, she called out. How is he? About what you'd expect. She wrung her hands. The lawyer says he could face up to 15 years. Mom, I know, she interrupted. I know what he did was wrong, but he's still my son. And I'm still your daughter. She met my eyes for the first time in weeks. Yes, you are. She took a shaky breath. I've been thinking about what you said, about Marcus, about all of it. I should have listened sooner. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was something. Would you like to get coffee? I asked. Talk properly? She nodded, tears spilling over. As we walked to the cafe across the street, Rohan's threats echoed in my mind. But they sounded different now. Hollow, powerless. The truth had stripped him of his weapons, leaving only a scared man in an orange jumpsuit, finally facing the consequences of his actions. My phone buzzed one last time. Vanessa. You did it. You're free. Looking at Mom's bowed head and Antonio's supportive smile, I realized Vanessa was right. The price of freedom had been steep, but some prices are worth paying. All rise, the bailiff called out. Court is now in session. 3 months had passed since my confrontation with Rohan. Now, on sentencing day, the courtroom was packed. I sat between Antonio and Vanessa, Mom directly behind us, as Rohan was led in. Before I deliver the sentence, the judge began, would any victims like to make a statement? A middle-aged woman stood up. Sarah, from Rohan's previous firm. Her hands shook as she gripped a piece of paper. Mr. Sullivan's actions didn't just cost me my job, she said. They cost me my reputation, my savings, my marriage. When I tried to expose his fraud, he convinced everyone I was unstable, jealous, vindictive. Rohan stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. But the worst part? Sarah continued. I started to believe him. That's what he does. Makes you doubt your own reality until you're nothing but a shadow of yourself. Marcus's mother spoke next, her voice steady despite her tears. My son isn't here to speak for himself, but his death certificate speaks volumes about the devastating impact of Mr. Sullivan's actions. The judge turned to Rohan. Would you like to make a statement? He stood slowly, adjusted his tie. Your Honor, I admit I made mistakes, but everything I did was to protect my family, to secure our future. My sister. Don't, I said loudly, standing up. Don't you dare try to blame this on me. Mrs. Ellis, the judge warned, please wait your turn. I'm sorry, Your Honor. I remained standing. But I'd like to make my statement now. She nodded. Rohan talks about family, I began. About protection and future. But real family doesn't destroy lives to get ahead. Real family doesn't gaslight and manipulate and threaten. Rohan's lawyer whispered something to him, but he shook his head. For years, I watched him hurt people. I stayed quiet, made excuses, helped cover his tracks. Because that's what family does, right? Protects each other? I took a deep breath. But I was wrong. Real protection means stopping someone before they destroy themselves and others. Mom let out a quiet sob behind me. My brother is charming, intelligent, and capable of incredible things. Instead, he chose to use those gifts to con and manipulate. He chose to push an innocent young man to suicide. He chose to ruin careers and lives. The judge leaned forward. And why did you finally decide to come forward? Because at my wedding, I saw him for who he really was. Someone who would never stop, never take responsibility, never change unless someone made him face consequences. Liar! Rohan suddenly shouted, jumping up. You were always jealous, always trying to tear me down. Order! The judge banged her gavel. Mr. Sullivan, control yourself or you'll be removed. Rohan sat, but his mask had completely slipped. His face was contorted with rage. You're nothing without me, he yelled. Tell them how you begged for my help. Tell them about the money you stole from Dad's. Remove him, the judge ordered. As guards led Rohan out, still shouting, I remained standing. Your Honor, I don't want my brother to suffer. I want him to get help, to understand the pain he's caused, to become the person he could have been. The judge studied me for a long moment. Thank you, Mrs. Ellis. You may sit. When the sentence was announced, 12 years with possibility of parole after 8, plus restitution to all victims, Mom broke down completely. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Antonio shielded me while Vanessa helped Mom to the car. Roslyn, a familiar voice called out. Sarah pushed through the crowd. Thank you for being brave enough to speak up. We hugged tightly, two women who'd finally reclaimed their voices. Later that evening, sitting in our backyard with Antonio, I finally felt the weight lifting. You know what's strange? I said, watching the sunset. I keep waiting to feel guilty, but I don't. He took my hand. That's because you did the right thing. Mom might never forgive me. She will. She's already starting to understand. He paused. I found something today. He handed me a small, worn notebook. My childhood diary. The one that started it all. Where did you... The lawyers released it. Evidence is no longer needed. He squeezed my hand. Maybe it's time to start a new one. Write your own story this time. My phone buzzed. A text from Deacon. Board promotion approved. The position is yours if you want it. I showed Antonio the message. What do you think? I think you've spent enough time in other people's shadows. He smiled. Time to step into the light. Inside, I heard Mom and Vanessa in the kitchen, preparing dinner. Normal sounds, everyday life continuing despite everything. And for the first time in years, I felt truly present in my own story. You're right, I said, standing up. No more shadows. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant colors. A new chapter was beginning, and this time I would write every word myself. The doorbell rang just as I finished unpacking the last box in my new office. Through the glass wall, I could see Mom standing nervously in the reception area. Come in, I called out, straightening the nameplate on my desk. Director of Investment Strategy. She entered slowly, taking in the corner office with its view of the city. It's beautiful, Roslyn. Thank you. I gestured to a chair. Would you like to sit? She perched on the edge, clutching her purse. I visited Rohan yesterday. How is he? Different. He's seeing a therapist now. Taking responsibility, he says. She twisted her hands. He asked about you. Mom, no, wait. Please. She pulled out an envelope. He wrote you this. The counselor helped him with it. You don't have to read it now, or ever, but he wanted you to have it. I took the envelope, feeling its weight. Thank you. There's something else. She reached into her purse again. I found this while cleaning out the attic. She handed me a faded photograph. 2 children on a beach, Rohan and me, building sandcastles. Before everything changed. You were such a good sister, Mom said softly. I forgot that somewhere along the way. Forgot a lot of things, actually. A knock at the door interrupted us. Deacon stood there with Antonio and Vanessa. Sorry to interrupt, Deacon said, but we have that meeting. Right. I stood up. Mom, I have to. Of course. She hesitated, then hugged me tightly. I'm proud of you. I should have said that more often. After she left, Vanessa raised an eyebrow at the envelope. You going to read it? Later. I tucked it into my desk drawer. We have work to do. In the conference room, I presented my first major initiative as director, a scholarship fund for victims of financial fraud named in Marcus's memory. The board has approved initial funding, Deacon announced. Mrs. Ellis will oversee the program personally. Back in my office that evening, I finally opened Rohan's letter. His familiar handwriting filled the page. Dear Roslyn, I've written this letter 17 times. The therapist says that's progress, admitting I don't know how to start. How do you apologize for a lifetime of wrongs? You were right about everything. About Marcus, about Sarah, about me. I told myself I was protecting the family, building something great. But I was just afraid. Afraid of being ordinary, of being less than perfect. I see now what it cost. What I cost you. The truth is, you were always the strong one. The real one. I was just a collection of masks and lies. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know, you didn't destroy the family by exposing me. You saved it. Saved me even though I fought you every step of the way. Your brother, Rohan. The phone on my desk buzzed. Mrs. Ellis? Marcus's mother is here for the scholarship meeting. Send her in. She entered carrying a framed photo of Marcus. I thought this should hang in the scholarship office, so the recipients know who they're honoring. As we hung the photo, Vanessa appeared in the doorway. Ready for dinner? Antonio's waiting downstairs. Just a minute. I turned to Marcus's mother. Would you like to join us? Over dinner, we shared stories, not just about Marcus, but about healing, about truth, about the complicated nature of love and family. Mom called halfway through, asking if she could come to the scholarship announcement ceremony next week. Of course, I said. It's about family after all. Later that night, I sat in my home office, holding Rohan's letter and the beach photograph. Antonio found me there. You okay? He asked. Actually, yes. I opened my laptop and began to type. Dear Rohan, I received your letter. You're right. You don't deserve forgiveness yet. That takes time, and work, and proof. But you do deserve the chance to become someone better. Someone real. The scholarship program launches next week. We're naming it after Marcus. His mother is helping organize it. Maybe someday when you're ready, you can contribute too. Not with money, but with truth. Your story might help others avoid the same path. I still have that photo from the beach. We were happy then, and real. Maybe we can find our way back to something authentic, even if it's different from before. Your sister, Roslyn. I hit send, then turned to Antonio. Let's go to bed. You sure you're done here? I looked around my office, at Marcus's photo, at my new diary, at the life I'd built from the ashes of secrets and lies. Yes, I said. I'm exactly where I need to be.
I remember that day like it was just yesterday. It was one of those rare days off where I decided to take matters into my own hands and clean the house. My parents' old place was more than just a house to me, it was a sanctuary filled with memories. After they passed, I kept everything the same, living a life they would have been proud of, simple, modest, and grounded, despite the wealth they left behind. So, there I was, knee-deep in dust and nostalgia, wearing the most unflattering outfit you could imagine, an old tee and faded jeans, hair tied up in a makeshift bun, with gloves that had seen better days. The sun was setting, and my stomach was rumbling, reminding me I had skipped lunch in my cleaning frenzy. Deciding to treat myself, I picked up my phone and dialed the local pizzeria. Yeah, hi, I'd like to order a large pepperoni with extra cheese, please. How soon can you get it here? I asked, hoping it wouldn't take too long. The voice on the other end assured me it'd be no more than 30 minutes. True to their word, the doorbell rang, and I rushed to answer it, eager for my cheesy reward. Standing on the doorstep was a young man, probably in his mid-20s, with a warm smile and a pizza box in hand. "Evening, ma'am. Pizza delivery," he said, his eyes scanning the grandeur of the foyer behind me. "Thanks. Just put it here." I gestured to the console table near the door, fishing for my wallet. As I handed him the cash, our eyes met, and an awkward yet friendly silence fell between us. He broke the ice first. "You work here long? This place is massive," he asked, curiosity lighting up his eyes. I couldn't help but smile at the assumption. "Something like that." I played along, not ready to reveal the whole truth. "Owners are quite the characters, you know?" "Yeah? They must be loaded to live in a place like this." "Must be nice, huh?" He chuckled, shifting the pizza box under his arm. "Suppose so," I replied, leaning against the door frame. "They're not home much. Always traveling or caught up in work." He nodded, understandingly. "Sounds lonely. You get to hang around in all this luxury, though. Not a bad deal, eh?" I laughed, a genuine, hearty laugh. "Guess you could say that. Beats the hustle outside." We chatted for a few more minutes, him asking about the owners and me spinning tales that were half true. There was something about this guy, a sincerity mixed with curiosity, that made me want to keep talking. "Hey, if you're not busy, maybe you'd like to grab a coffee sometime? You know, when you're not working," he ventured, a hopeful look in his eyes. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to, but because I knew this little game of pretend couldn't last forever. "Sure, why not? Could use a friend around here," I found myself saying, surprising even me. "Great. I'm Alex, by the way." He extended his hand, which I shook, feeling the warmth of his grasp. "Emma," I introduced myself, deciding to stick to at least one truth tonight. After that first unexpected meeting with Alex, things started to pick up speed faster than I could have imagined. Our first coffee date turned into a series of meetups, each one more interesting than the last. It wasn't long before I found myself looking forward to our time together, enjoying the simplicity and authenticity of our conversations. It was a refreshing change from the usual circles I found myself in. One evening, as we were walking through the park after grabbing a bite from a food truck, Alex turned to me, his expression curious. "Emma, you ever think about what it's like, living a life without all this?" He gestured around, implying the modest surroundings compared to the grandeur of my home. I shrugged, keeping my response light. "Sometimes, I guess. But it's not the place that makes the life, you know? It's the people, the experiences." He nodded, looking thoughtful. "Yeah, I get that. Just seems like a different world from mine, is all." As days turned into weeks, our casual outings started to feel like something more. Alex was different. He didn't put on airs or try to impress with grand gestures. He was just himself, and that made me feel comfortable being me, or at least, the version of me I had presented to him. One night, we found ourselves at a local dive bar, the kind of place I'd never stepped foot in before meeting him. The atmosphere was lively, filled with the buzz of conversation and laughter. We squeezed into a booth, the dim lighting casting shadows over our table. "So, Emma," Alex started, a playful edge to his voice, "ever think about ditching the fancy life and running away to a cabin in the woods? Just you, me, and nature?" I laughed, the idea so far from my reality, but oddly appealing. "Run away to a cabin, huh? And leave all my responsibilities behind? Tempting, but I think I'd miss the chaos of my life." He leaned in, his gaze intense. "I'm serious. You ever just want to get away from it all? No expectations, no pressures?" I met his gaze, feeling a surge of honesty. "Yeah, I do. More often than you'd think. Sometimes I wonder what my life would have been like if things were different, simpler." Alex reached across the table, taking my hand in his. "Emma, whatever life you've got waiting for you out there, I want you to know I'm here for you. Doesn't matter if it's a mansion or a cabin in the woods. I like you for you." It had been a few months since Alex and I started seeing each other. Our relationship, built on a foundation of supposed simplicity and modest living, was about to face its first real test. I had danced around the truth of my identity for too long, and the weight of the lie was becoming unbearable. It was time to come clean, to reveal the world I actually came from. But how do you tell someone you've been lying to them about who you are since the day you met? I decided to invite Alex over for dinner at my place, well, the mansion that he thought belonged to my employers. It was the setting of our first encounter and, in my mind, the fitting place for my confession. As I prepared dinner, my thoughts raced. How would Alex react? Would he see me as a liar, or would he understand why I did it? The doorbell rang, snapping me out of my reverie. It was showtime. "Hey, Alex. Come on in," I greeted him, trying to sound as normal as possible. "Wow, your bosses must really trust you to have you host dinner in their mansion," Alex joked as he stepped inside, looking around. I chuckled nervously. "Yeah, about that. Why don't we sit down? Dinner's almost ready." We made small talk as we settled at the dining table, the elaborate spread in front of us a stark contrast to our usual low-key dates. Alex seemed to sense something was off, his usual cheerful demeanor replaced with a look of concern. "Emma, what's going on? You've been acting weird all evening," Alex finally said, setting down his fork. Taking a deep breath, I decided it was now or never. "Alex, there's something I need to tell you. Something important." He leaned in, attentive. "Okay, shoot." "The truth is," I began, my heart pounding, "this house, it's mine. And not just the house. The business I told you I work at? It's actually my company. I inherited it from my parents." For a moment, there was silence. Alex's expression was unreadable, a mixture of surprise, confusion, and something else I couldn't quite place. "You mean, you're rich?" he finally said, his voice a mix of disbelief and curiosity. "Yeah, I am. And I'm so sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I wanted to keep things simple. I wanted someone to like me for me, not my money," I explained, bracing myself for his reaction. Alex sat back, processing the news. "Wow, that's a lot to take in. So, every time we talked about your bosses, you were actually talking about yourself?" I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. "Yes. And I understand if you're mad or if you want to leave. I just couldn't keep lying to you." There was a long pause, during which I could almost hear my heart beating. Then, Alex reached across the table, taking my hand in his. "Emma, I won't lie and say I'm not shocked. But I'm not mad. I get why you did it. This world is full of people who would kill to be in your shoes, not for the responsibility, but for the perks. You wanted to avoid that, to find something real. I respect that," he said, his gaze sincere. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, mixed with a twinge of guilt for ever doubting him. "Really? You're not upset?" Alex shook his head. "No. I like you, Emma. Not your money, not your mansion. You. This doesn't change how I feel." His words were like a balm to my frayed nerves. The fear of rejection, of judgment, melted away, leaving a sense of hope and newfound trust between us. "Thank you, Alex. That means everything to me," I said, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. We spent the rest of the evening talking openly about my life, my family, and the business. I shared stories I had never told anyone, feeling a connection to Alex that went deeper than before. After I let Alex into the real world of my wealth, things took a turn I didn't expect. He was all in, more than I ever dreamed. One evening, out of the blue, he dropped the question that would change everything. "Marry me, Emma," he said, his eyes shining with something fierce. "Let's do it big, in some jaw-dropping place. Then jet off somewhere, just you and me." The idea set my heart racing. A family with Alex, something real and mine, was all I ever wanted. But his vision of grandeur threw me. "Alex, I love the thought of us, a future," I started, trying to keep my voice steady. "But why all the flash? Can't we discover each other without splashing out? He didn't take it well. The look on his face was like I slapped him. What, my idea's not good enough, he shot back, a sharp edge in his voice. No, it's not that. I hurried to explain. It's just, I thought, maybe we could keep it simple, focus on us. He scoffed, shaking his head. Simple. Right. You're probably just too embarrassed to waste your cash on someone like me. That stung. Alex, stop. It's not about the money. I thought you knew that. He didn't say anything for a moment, just stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Then, without another word, he walked out. He ghosted me for days after that, leaving me to stew in worry and doubt. Had I hurt him that bad? Was I wrong? I couldn't stand the silence and uncertainty. I picked up the phone and dialed his number, my heart pounding in my chest. Alex? I said when he finally answered, my voice barely above a whisper. Emma, he replied, his voice cold, distant. I'm sorry, I blurted out, the words tumbling out in a rush. If the wedding you want is what you need, we can talk about it. I miss you. There was a pause, long enough for my heart to sink. Then, slowly, he spoke. I miss you too. Maybe I pushed too hard. It's just, being with you, it's all so new to me. I got carried away. Relief washed over me, warm and soothing. It's okay, Alex. We're in this together, right? Let's figure it out, find a middle ground. Yeah, he said, a hint of the old warmth returning to his voice. Together. We met up the next day, talked for hours about what we both envisioned for our future. It wasn't easy, navigating the clash of dreams and realities, but we were committed. We agreed to take things slow, to focus on building us, before diving into any lavish plans. Living with Alex in my house started off as a dream. But dreams can get complicated fast, especially when they start messing with reality. Alex settled in quicker than I thought possible, acting like he owned the place. He'd walk around, making plans about changing furniture and fixing up rooms as if it were his personal project. One evening, he dropped a bombshell that caught me completely off guard. Emma, we need to talk, Alex began, his tone serious, a stark contrast to his usual easygoing self. I paused, sensing the gravity in his voice. Okay, what's up? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. He took a deep breath, then let it out, slowly. I've been thinking, about us, about how people see us. I know what it looks like, me moving into your place, all this. He gestured around, encompassing the luxury of the house in one sweeping motion. I frowned, not liking where this was heading. What about it? I asked, a defensive edge creeping into my voice. It's just, I don't want anyone thinking I'm with you for the money, for the house. It makes me feel like a total jerk, he admitted, looking down at his hands. I softened, understanding his concern but unsure of the solution. Alex, you know that's not true. Why does it matter what anyone else thinks? Because it does, Emma. To me, it does. He shot back, frustration lacing his words. I need to know that you trust me, really trust me. And I do, Alex. But what are you getting at? I pressed, a sense of unease growing in my stomach. He looked up, his eyes meeting mine with a resolve I hadn't seen before. I want us to sign a prenup. I'll give up any claim to your property, your money. I don't want a penny if things don't work out. The suggestion took me aback. A prenup? I echoed, the idea swirling in my head. Yeah, a prenup. But there's more, he continued, hesitating before plunging ahead. I think you should give me half of the house. Before the wedding. So I can feel like it's really our home, not just me living in your shadow. The request hit me like a ton of bricks. Give you half of the house? Alex, are you serious? I asked, my voice rising in disbelief. He nodded, earnestly. Yes, I'm serious. It's the only way I'll feel like I'm not just some charity case you're taking care of. I need to feel like an equal in this relationship. The conversation spiraled from there, his words echoing in my head long after we'd stopped talking. The idea of giving Alex the house, of proving my trust in such a tangible, irreversible way, felt daunting. Yet, his plea tugged at my heartstrings. He was convincing, passionate even, about making this work, about us being equals. In a moment of emotional turmoil, I agreed. Okay, Alex. If it means that much to you, we'll do it your way, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Walking out of Mr. Thompson's office, I was still in a daze from what we'd just done. The paperwork, the formalities, it all felt surreal. But the cold slap of reality came faster than I could have imagined. So, Emma, Alex started, his tone light but with an edge that immediately put me on alert. Now that we're partners in this, how about we talk terms? I blinked, confused. Terms? What do you mean? He stopped walking, turning to face me with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. Well, you see, I've been thinking. This place, our home, it's worth a pretty penny, right? About $7 million, if I'm not mistaken. I felt a chill run down my spine. Yeah, so? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. So, I figure my half is worth about $3.5 million. And I think it's only fair if you buy me out, he said, the words casual, as if he were discussing the weather. My heart stopped. Buy you out? Alex, what are you talking about? This was supposed to be our home, not an investment. He laughed, a sound that made my stomach turn. Our home? Please, Emma, don't be so naive. I saw an opportunity, and I took it. You can't blame me for playing it smart. I could feel the tears welling up, betrayal mixing with disbelief. But, you said you loved me. That this was about us starting a life together. Love? He scoffed, shaking his head. This was about securing my future, and thanks to you, it's looking pretty bright. I was reeling, each word a blow to my heart. How could you do this to me? Alex waved the property documents in front of my face, his smile cruel. Because, Emma, you made it so easy. I mean, who signs over half their house to someone without a second thought? You really are a fool. The words cut deeper than any knife. I stood there, frozen, as he continued to mock me, laughter echoing off the walls of the world we had built together, a world that was crumbling around me. You'll regret this, I finally managed to say, my voice a whisper. He stopped laughing, his gaze cold and calculating. I doubt it. But hey, if you want to keep living in your precious house, you know what it'll cost you. With that, he walked away, leaving me alone with the ruins of my trust and love. In that moment, I knew I had made a monumental mistake, one that would change the course of my life forever. But as the initial shock faded, replaced by a burning anger and determination, I vowed to fight back. Alex may have thought he won, but this was far from over. Walking back into Mr. Thompson's office felt like stepping into a safe haven after being out in a storm. The look on his face told me he'd been expecting this mess from the get-go. Mr. Thompson, I've messed up big time, I blurted out, barely able to keep my composure. He gestured for me to sit, his demeanor calm and collected. Tell me everything, Emma. And so, I did. Every sordid detail spilled out, my voice shaky but determined. When I finished, Mr. Thompson didn't seem surprised. Instead, he looked thoughtful, almost as if he'd anticipated this all along. Emma, there's something you should know about your father's will, he began, his tone serious. He made it clear that the house would be yours, fully and completely, but only after you're married. Since that hasn't happened, legally, the transaction you made with Alex holds no water. I sat there, stunned, as his words sunk in. So, you're saying, the house is still mine? Alex has no claim to it? Exactly, Mr. Thompson confirmed, a slight smile on his face. Your father was a wise man. He protected you, even from beyond. Relief washed over me, followed by a surge of righteous anger. I want to make Alex regret ever trying this. Is there anything we can do? Mr. Thompson leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against his chin. Well, there's the matter of taxes. If he were the legal owner, he'd be responsible for a hefty sum in property and land taxes. Not to mention, there are restrictions on selling or transferring his share within 3 years of acquisition. A plan began to form in my mind, and with Mr. Thompson's guidance, I knew exactly what to do. I didn't waste any time. Picking up my phone, I dialed Alex, my heart pounding with a mix of nervousness and exhilaration. "Alex, we need to talk about the house," I said, my voice steady. He sounded cautious, but smug. "What about it, Emma?" I took a deep breath and launched into my spiel. "According to the law, you're now on the hook for a massive amount in property taxes. And let's not forget the land tax. Oh, and you can't sell or even give away your share for 3 years. So, good luck with that." There was silence on the other end, and I could almost hear the gears in his brain grinding to a halt. "This is some kind of joke, right?" Alex finally managed, his voice a mixture of disbelief and panic. "No joke, Alex. You wanted the house, you got it, along with all its obligations. Enjoy dealing with the IRS, I said, a hint of satisfaction creeping into my voice. Hanging up the phone, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't just about the house or the money. It was about standing up for myself, about not letting someone's greed and manipulation dictate my life. Mr. Thompson smiled approvingly. "Well done, Emma. Your father would be proud." That evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the front yard, Alex showed up at my door, a look of desperation plastered across his face. The air between us was thick with tension, the kind that makes your skin crawl. "Emma, listen, I'm sorry," he stammered, avoiding eye contact. "I think you got it all wrong. About the house, the taxes. I need help." I couldn't help but let out a laugh, not because anything was funny, but because of the audacity. The nerve of him, showing up like this after everything. "Sorry? You think a simple sorry is going to cut it after what you pulled?" He shuffled uncomfortably, his eyes darting around, looking for any sign of sympathy. The taxes, Emma. They're going to bury me. You know I can't afford them." Standing there, watching him squirm, a sense of empowerment washed over me. I reached into my pocket, pulling out the documents, the very ones that could have sealed my fate to his. "You want to know about taxes? Let me show you something." With a dramatic flourish, I tore the documents into shreds, letting the pieces flutter to the ground like the first snow of winter. "There. Consider yourself saved from the taxes. This deal? It was never valid. We're not married, Alex. You never had a claim to my house. My dad made sure of that. You're free to go, free from any taxes this house might have saddled you with." The look on his face was priceless, a mix of confusion, relief, and something else, defeat, maybe. He was speechless, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "But, Emma, he started, but I wasn't having any of it." "No buts, Alex. It's over. And just to be clear," I said, stepping closer, my voice low but fierce, "if I see you around here again, I'm calling the cops. Got it?" He nodded, a defeated slump to his shoulders, then turned and walked away, his steps heavy with the weight of his failed scheme. Watching him go, I felt a chapter of my life closing, one I was all too happy to end. As I gathered his belongings, dumping them unceremoniously on the curb, a promise to myself took shape in my mind. Never again would I let myself be so blinded by love or anything else that I ignore the glaring warning signs. I had learned my lesson, a costly one, but one that would guide my steps moving forward. My name is Lara. My life at 45 was a testament to what hard work and independence could achieve. Over $10,000 a month wasn't just a number, It was my declaration of success in a high-stakes game. Back when I was knee-deep in the MLM hustle, making a name and some solid cash for myself, Tom came into the picture. He was all charm and smarts, totally taken with the way I managed my business with a kind of independence that seemed to draw him in like a moth to a flame. He started showing up more, offering to help out with business stuff, or just to grab a coffee. I wasn't looking for anything serious, mind you. I liked my freedom, liked making my own rules and breaking them if I felt like it. But Tom, he had a way about him, a persistence that wasn't pushy but kind of endearing. "You're not like most folks I meet in this gig," I told him once, over coffee. "Most guys run for the hills when they hear network marketing." Tom chuckled, taking a sip of his coffee. "Maybe I like the view from the hills. Gives me a chance to see who's climbing up to meet me." It was this blend of humor and sincerity that drew me to him. Our meetings became more frequent, and Tom's interest in my world grew. He asked questions, real ones that made me explain my business in ways I hadn't even considered. It was refreshing, invigorating, and, dare I say, flirtatious. We'd sit and chat about everything under the sun, and it wasn't long before he started talking about his mom. Now, I've always been close to my own folks, so hearing him speak so respectfully about his mother caught my attention. It wasn't just talk, you could tell he meant every word, held her in high regard. And that, I could respect. "Yeah, my mom's the real deal," he'd say with a kind of pride that lit up his face. "She's been through a lot, you know? Raised me all on her own. She's my rock." Hearing that stirred something in me. I've seen my own parents stick out the tough times, their love and respect for each other a constant through it all. I guess that's what got me seeing Tom in a new light. So, when he asked me to marry him, it wasn't the grand gesture or the promise of a life of ease that got me to say yes. It was the simple, honest love he had for his family. I thought, anyone who holds his family in such high regard, who talks about his mom with that much admiration, he's got to be a good man at heart. We got hitched, and those first few months were something out of a dream. Laughs, late-night talks about where we wanted our little empire to go, weekend getaways, just because we could. I was happy, genuinely happy, thinking I'd found someone who got me, who respected my hustle and had my back. After the initial bliss of our unconventional meeting and the whirlwind romance that followed, settling into married life with Tom brought its own set of challenges. One thing that started to stick out was Tom's relationship with his mother, Carol. It wasn't just close, it was suffocatingly tight. They were on the phone multiple times a day, and our weekends were monopolized by visits to her place. It started to gnaw at me, the extent of his attachment and the expectations it placed on us, especially me. One Saturday morning, as we were gearing up for yet another weekend at Carol's, I couldn't hold my tongue any longer. "Tom, do we have to spend every weekend doing chores at your mom's? I mean, doesn't she have anyone else to help out?" Tom looked at me like I'd just suggested we moon the neighbors. "Laura, she's old, and it's just us. Who else is gonna do it?" I sighed, frustration bubbling. "But, it's every weekend. Don't you think it's a bit much? I've got stuff I'd like to do too, you know?" His brow furrowed, and he crossed his arms, a clear sign he was digging in. "Look, Laura, she's my mom. She's always been there for me, and now it's my turn. I thought you'd understand that." The conversation was going nowhere, a stalemate between his unwavering loyalty to his mother and my growing resentment towards the situation. It was a red flag, flapping furiously in the wind of our relationship, but I chose to ignore it, convincing myself it was just a phase. As weeks turned into months, the red flags multiplied. Tom's sarcasm about my work began to surface more frequently. It was subtle at first, almost playful, but there was an undercurrent of disdain that I couldn't overlook. One evening, after a long day of video calls and client follow-ups, I settled next to Tom on the couch, laptop still warm from use. "Phew, nailed another big client today. This could be a game changer for us," I said, trying to share my excitement. Tom, eyes glued to the TV, grunted in response. Oh, yeah, that's great. But don't you think it's time you considered a real job? You know, one that doesn't have you glued to that screen all day? I bristled, my enthusiasm cooling into annoyance. A real job? Tom, this is a real job. I'm making more than we'd ever dreamed of. What's not real about that? He shrugged, not meeting my eyes. I dunno, Lara. It's just, all this network marketing stuff seems a bit dodgy, doesn't it? The word stung, a slap to everything I'd worked so hard to achieve. Dodgy? You know what, Tom? Maybe you should spend a day in my shoes, before you start judging. The conversation ended there, but the tension lingered, a thick fog between us that didn't dissipate. Tom's inability to value my career, coupled with his abnormal attachment to his mother, left me feeling isolated in my own marriage. The red flags were no longer just flapping in the wind, they were blaring sirens, warning me of the storm ahead. Yet, I pressed on, hoping for a change, clinging to the memories of our early days. But as time passed, it became increasingly clear that Tom's loyalty was split in a way that left little room for us, for me. The endless weekends at Carol's, my mother-in-law's place, had turned from a mild inconvenience into a full-blown chore. Every visit was the same routine: sit at the dining table, nod along to Carol's lectures on housekeeping and the importance of saving every penny, and watch Tom hang on to every word she said as gospel. It was like stepping back in time, and I was wearing thin. One such afternoon, as Carol went on about the virtues of homemade meals over eating out, Tom chimed in, his voice laced with that now familiar sarcasm. Yeah, Lara, maybe you should take a page out of Mom's book. All that time on your computer, and what do you have to show for it? A strange business that no one understands. I felt my cheeks burn, a mix of anger and embarrassment. Tom, we've been over this. My strange business is paying our bills, and then some. I'm working, not playing around on the internet. He scoffed, shooting a look at Carol, who wore a smug expression. A real job doesn't have you stuck at home all day. It's about getting out there, dealing with real people, not just numbers on a screen. The jab stung, more so because it was made in front of Carol, who nodded in agreement as if she had any say in our finances. I bit back the retort on the tip of my tongue, realizing it was futile. Tom was echoing his mother's outdated views, and there was no winning against a united front. Feeling isolated and misunderstood, I decided to seek refuge with my parents. They were old school in their own way, but they understood the value of hard work, regardless of the form it took. Their reaction to Tom's criticisms was a mix of anger and disappointment. Lara, it's clear he's jealous, my dad said, his brow furrowed in concern. Envious because you're succeeding without having to trudge to some office every day. Don't let his insecurities drag you down. My mom nodded, her hand squeezing mine. You're doing amazing, sweetheart. Tom needs to see that. He's supposed to support you, not tear you down. Their words were a balm to my frayed nerves, and with a renewed sense of resolve, I returned home, hoping to clear the air with Tom. But what awaited me was far from the reconciliation I'd hoped for. Tom was livid, pacing the living room like a caged animal. So, you ran to your parents to complain about me? About us? He accused, not even bothering to greet me. I was taken aback by the intensity of his anger. Tom, I needed some perspective. They're my parents. Who else am I supposed to talk to? His laugh was harsh, void of any humor. Perspective? Or you wanted them to take your side, tell you how wrong I am? They're poisoning you against me, Lara. That's not true, and you know it, I countered, my own anger rising. They're worried about us, about how we're not communicating. It's not about taking sides. But Tom wouldn't hear it. No, it's always about sides with you. Your business, your money, your parents. What about me, Lara? When do I get to be a part of this marriage? Eventually, the tension cooled, and we found our way back to a fragile truce, but the cracks remained, widening with every sarcastic comment, every dismissive gesture. The air was thick with tension, the kind that settles in your stomach like a bad meal, as we sat around Carol's, my mother-in-law's, cluttered dining table. As usual, Tom and Carol were in their element, a duo of traditional views and thinly veiled jabs at my expense. Today's topic of choice, once again, geared towards the proper roles in marriage, a well Carol seemed to draw from endlessly. "You know, Laura," Tom started, his voice laced with that familiar patronizing tone, "Mom's right. There's more to being a wife than just making money. Maybe it's time you started focusing on what really matters." I clenched my fists under the table, my patience wearing thin. "And what, according to you, really matters? Cleaning? Cooking? Being at your beck and call?" Carol jumped in, her voice sharp. "Exactly. It's about making a home, caring for your husband. Not glued to a screen all day. I know plenty of women who'd be more than happy to take your place, ones who understand the value of a proper marriage." The audacity of her words struck a nerve. "Oh, is that so?" I shot back, my voice rising despite my attempts to keep calm. "You think you can just replace me with some step-forward wife who fits your outdated idea of a proper marriage?" Tom's allegiance was clear as he nodded along with his mother's cruel suggestion. "Laura, you're missing the point. It's not about replacing you. It's about what's best for us, for our family." "Best for us? Or best for you and your mother?" I countered, feeling the weight of their united front. Since when did our marriage become a three-person decision? The humiliation of being openly discussed as replaceable, as if I were nothing more than a poor fit in their perfect world, was a new low. Feeling cornered and outnumbered, I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You know what? If you're so convinced you can find someone better, then maybe you should," I spat out, the hurt evident in my voice. Tom looked taken aback, as if he hadn't expected his words and his mother's to cut so deep. But the damage was done, the line drawn in the sand. "I thought marriage was about partnership, support, and love. Not constant criticism and unrealistic expectations," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. There was a heavy silence, one that spoke volumes about the state of our relationship. As I walked out of the room, the sound of my footsteps echoed, a resolute declaration that I wouldn't be belittled or demeaned any longer. After the last blow-up, I was done. Done with the weekend cleanups at Carol's, done with the moralizing, just done. Tom tried to guilt-trip me about it, calling me selfish, saying I didn't care about family. But I wasn't having any of it this time. I had reached my limit. Then came the day that broke the camel's back. I noticed our joint account was bleeding money, a lot of it. Money we'd been scrimping and saving for a new car, our dream car. My heart raced as I logged into our online banking, only to see a massive transaction that nearly wiped us out. I confronted Tom the moment he walked through the door. "Where's the money, Tom?" "The car fund, it's practically gone." He couldn't look me in the eye. I had to use it for something important." "Important? What could possibly be more important than what we've been saving for?" I was fuming, barely containing my anger. "It was for Mom's trip, her dream cruise to Europe." He mumbled it out like a confession. I was stunned into silence for a moment. "You used our savings? For a cruise? Without even asking me?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Tom finally faced me, his expression a mix of guilt and defiance. "I thought you'd understand. It's her dream." "Her dream? What about our dreams, Tom? What about our plans?" I was shouting now, my voice echoing off the walls. He had no answer, just stood there looking pathetic. That's when I decided to take matters into my own hands. I called Carol, hoping, maybe foolishly, that she'd see reason. "Carol, this has to stop. Tom used our savings for your trip. This is a mistake. You need to cancel it," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Her laughter over the phone was like acid. "Cancel? Why would I do that? It's a gift from my son. And as for the money, dear, I'm sure you can earn it back." The contempt in her voice was palpable. You're not even going to consider it? After everything, this is how little you think of me? I was grasping at straws, but I had to try. Listen, darling, I'm not refusing a trip of a lifetime. And if you're not happy, well, Tom's already prepared for that too. Check the desk drawer, she said, her voice cold. I hung up and went straight to the desk, my hands trembling. There, among bills and old receipts, were the divorce papers, signed and ready to go, as if Tom had been planning this all along. My heart wasn't just broken, it was pulverized. I signed them, my hands steady, but my soul in turmoil. Packing my bags felt like I was erasing a part of my life, a part one once cherished. As I zipped up the last of my luggage, Tom finally spoke up. His words were a cold dagger. I saw how you talked to my mother. No respect. You don't deserve to be in this house. You don't deserve me. His words hit me like a slap. The arrogance. The conceit. To think he saw himself as some prize, worth fighting over, after everything that happened. It was laughable, if it wasn't so tragic. Yeah? Well, maybe I don't want to deserve a man who thinks so little of me. Who values his mother's happiness over his wife's. My voice was calm, but inside, I was a whirlwind of emotion. Tom just shrugged, a smug look on his face. Good luck finding someone who'll put up with you like I did. I shook my head, disbelief and anger mingling. Trust me, Tom, the only thing I'll be looking for is peace. Something you and your mother never gave me. Leaving that house, I felt a weight lifting off me. It was the end of one chapter and the start of another. Driving to my parents' house, the emotions were overwhelming. But as soon as I saw the familiar front door, a sense of relief washed over me. This was home. This was where I belonged. My parents were shocked at first, but their support was unwavering. You're back now, and that's all that matters, my dad said, his voice firm and comforting. Mom was more fiery. Let him live with his mother if he loves her so much. You'll find peace now, without their constant badgering. And she was right. I threw myself into my work, my independence blossoming in the absence of Tom's and Carol's criticism. Saving money became easier without the drain of their demands. Slowly, I started to build a life for myself, one where I was in control, where my achievements were celebrated, not belittled. Living with my parents again, I rediscovered what support and love felt like. It wasn't long before I was able to move into my own place, a small but cozy house that was all mine. No Carol to judge me, no Tom to disappoint me. Just me, my work, and the peace I had longed for. Reflecting on everything that happened, I realized Tom was no prize. The real prize was finding myself again, rebuilding my life on my terms. I found strength I never knew I had, and a sense of peace that was priceless. Months had passed since I left Tom and his overbearing mother behind, settling into a rhythm of work, savings, and peace that had long eluded me. My new life was a quiet one, filled with small joys and achievements that were entirely my own. Then, out of the blue, my phone rang with a number I hadn't seen in a while. It was Carol. Hello? My voice was cautious, the old feelings of tension instantly creeping back. Lara, it's Carol. We need your help. Her voice was shaky, a far cry from the confident, often haughty tone I was used to. I was taken aback. My help? Why would you call me after everything? It's Tom, she said, and I could hear the strain in her voice. He's sick, Lara. Very sick. Lung cancer. The news hit me harder than I expected. Despite everything, I felt a pang of concern. I'm sorry to hear that, Carol. But why are you telling me this? Because he needs you, Lara. He needs your support, your forgiveness. We need the money for his treatment. You were always the one who managed to pull things together, she pleaded. I was stunned into silence for a moment. The audacity of her request left me speechless. You want my money? After you practically pushed me out of your lives? Carol's voice hardened. You can hold on to your grudges, Lara, but this is life and death. You were his wife. Doesn't that mean anything to you? The old Carol was back, it seemed. Being his wife didn't seem to mean much when you two were scheming behind my back, I retorted, my initial shock turning into indignation. Lara, please. I wouldn't be calling if there was any other way. Think of the good times, of what you had with Tom. She tried to soften her tone, playing on my emotions. Good times? Carol, you made sure there were as few of those as possible. You and Tom made your bed. Now, you get to lie in it, I said, the years of frustration and hurt fueling my words. There was a pause, and then Carol's voice came through, colder and sharper than before. Fine. If that's how you want to play it. But remember, you're turning your back on Tom in his time of need. Not me. The call ended, and I sat there, phone in hand, a tumult of emotion swirling within me. Anger, guilt, sadness, a cocktail of feelings for a man who had chosen his mother over our life together, and for a woman who saw me as nothing more than a bank. In that moment, I realized the true extent of my freedom. I was no longer bound by their expectations, their demands, or their crises. My life was my own, built on my efforts, my sacrifices. The call, unexpected as it was, served as a stark reminder of the life I had left behind, a life filled with manipulation and emotional blackmail. As I put the phone down, a sense of resolve settled over me. My departure from Tom and Carol's lives was not just a physical one, it was an emotional and financial break too. I had moved on, building something that was entirely mine, free from their shadows. I started diving into investments, reading up every book and article I could get my hands on, and slowly, I began to see the fruits of my labor. My world became numbers and trends, a far cry from the emotional turmoil I left behind. Word got around, as it always does, about Tom's worsening condition and how Carol was barely managing. They'd blown through whatever savings they had, living a life far removed from the comfort they once knew. And Carol, ever the martyr in her own story, made sure everyone knew how I abandoned them in their time of need, painting me as the heartless ex-wife. I heard these rumors from Jenna one afternoon over coffee. She hesitated before telling me, probably expecting me to react. But the truth was, I felt nothing but a distant pity for them. Can you believe it, Lara? Carol's out there telling anyone who'll listen about how you left them high and dry, Jenna said, her voice tinged with disbelief. I shrugged, taking a sip of my coffee. Let her talk, Jenna. Her words don't touch me anymore. I've moved on, and I'm investing in my future, something they never thought to do. Jenna looked at me, a mix of surprise and admiration in her eyes. You're really over it, aren't you? I mean, completely. I nodded, a smile playing on my lips. Completely. My life's taken a turn for the better since I stopped letting them define my worth. I'm making smart investments, learning more every day. Their opinions, their struggles, they're just echoes of a life I left behind. It was liberating, this feeling of complete detachment from the chaos that once consumed me. The rumors, the pitying glances, they meant nothing now. I was building something lasting, investing in myself and my future. The contrast between my growing stability and their dwindling fortunes was stark, but it was the result of choices we each made. As I continued to expand my knowledge and portfolio, the satisfaction of seeing my investments grow was unmatched. I was proving to myself, more than anyone else, that I could thrive on my own terms. The independence and financial security I was building were my true vindication, far removed from the petty squabbles and desperate gossip of Carol's making. One evening, as I reviewed my investment portfolio, the growth and progress reflected in those numbers filled me with a sense of pride. This was real, tangible proof of my resilience and foresight. The rumors, Carol's bitterness, Tom's struggles, they were just background noise to the symphony of my new life. In this quiet moment of reflection, I realized the true extent of my transformation. I had not only survived the storm, but emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined. My past with Tom and Carol was a chapter closed, a lesson learned, and my future was a canvas I was eager to fill with the colors of success and peace. Life's been kind of a wild ride, you know? Here I am, Anna, clocking in at 42, with what you might call the whole package. Got a nice house, thanks to my folks passing it down. It's one of those cozy places that's seen more memories than I can count. And then there's Mark, my other half. Met him back when I was just figuring life out, and he was tending bar at some dive, barely scraping by. My dad saw something in him, though, pulled some strings, and bam, Mark's running the top spot in town now. Funny how things turn out, huh? Our kids, Emily and Alex, they're our little trophies. Emily's got her head screwed on tight, always one step ahead, a real spitfire. Alex, he's the quiet storm, always buried in a book or some hobby that's got his brain ticking. I remember when Mark and I decided to shack up. It wasn't all roses and sunshine, but something about us just clicked. We were a team, tackling whatever crap life threw our way. When Emily came along, we were over the moon, and then Alex rounded us out. Felt like we hit the jackpot, you know? Mom, why'd you pick Dad, of all people? Emily would ask, her tone dripping with that teenage mix of curiosity and skepticism. I'd laugh, tossing a look Mark's way. Well, he made me laugh. And your granddad thought he could use a leg up. Seemed like a good bet. Mark would chime in, and I had the charm. Don't forget the charm, Anna. Yeah, charm, I'd echo, with a wink. Life with Mark was never dull. He had a way of turning the mundane into something worth remembering. Alex, ever the observer, would add, Dad's cool. He knows everyone and everything about the bar. That bar, it was more than just a job for Mark. It was his kingdom, and he ruled it with a kind of passion that was contagious. My dad helping him land that gig was the best kind of meddling. Gave us a stability we might not have had otherwise. We'd sit around the dinner table, the four of us, and it felt like we were in our little bubble. This is it, you know? I'd say, soaking in the moment. Our slice of the good life. And that was us. A bit rough around the edges, maybe, but solid. It was in those moments, amidst the banter and the everyday chaos, that I'd feel this surge of gratitude. For my family, our home, and the life we'd built out of love, laughs, and a whole lot of hard work. It wasn't perfect, but damn, it was ours. The thing about doubt is it creeps up on you like a shadow at dusk, silent and almost invisible until it's all you can see. That's how it started with Mark. His late nights at the bar weren't anything new, but they started stacking up, night after night, more than the usual. And then, one night, he didn't come home at all. Where's Dad? Alex asked one morning, his eyes scanning the empty seat at the breakfast table. Work stuff, baby. He had to stay late, I answered, stirring my coffee more than it needed, avoiding Emily's piercing gaze. Yeah, right. Emily snorted, her skepticism as clear as day. That's getting old, Mom. I couldn't shake her words, nor the nagging feeling in my gut. Mark had excuses, sure, but they were getting flimsier by the day. And then came the lipstick. A bright, bold color, clashing with everything in my makeup drawer. Holding it between my fingers felt like holding a piece of evidence, a clue in a mystery I didn't want to solve. This yours? I asked Emily, trying to keep my voice steady. She glanced at it and rolled her eyes. Please, Mom. I wouldn't be caught dead in that shade. The conversation with Mark about it was anything but reassuring. Found this in your car, I said, tossing the lipstick onto the kitchen counter between us. Mark barely glanced at it before shrugging. Probably one of the staff's. You know how it is, things get left behind. His nonchalance stung, a stark contrast to the turmoil churning inside me. Things, or people? I shot back, the words out before I could stop them. Anna, come on. You know it's not like that, he replied, his tone a mix of frustration and fatigue. I wanted to believe him, to laugh it off as paranoia, but the seed of doubt had taken root. Emily, always one to call it like she sees it, didn't let it go. You're not actually buying that, are you? It's like textbook cheating behavior. Her blunt assessment hit hard. What do you suggest then, detective? I asked, half in jest, half desperate for any kind of guidance. Hire someone to follow him. Find out for real, she said, dead serious. The idea was ludicrous, something out of a TV drama, not our life. But the thought lodged itself in my mind, growing with every unanswered call, every vague explanation of Mark's whereabouts. Deciding to hire a private investigator felt like crossing a line, the first step down a path I wasn't sure I wanted to tread. But as I tossed and turned, I realized that not knowing was worse than any truth I might uncover. The uncertainty was a constant, gnawing presence, and I needed it gone. Morning brought a decision, a resolve hardened by a restless night. I'm going to do it, I told Emily, her nod of approval, both reassuring and terrifying. Mark, oblivious to the storm brewing, kissed me goodbye that morning with a casual, "See you tonight." I watched him go, the familiar routine now tinged with suspicion and fear. What I was about to do felt like betrayal, yet wasn't that what I feared he was doing to me? The irony wasn't lost on me, but neither was the determination to find the truth, no matter how it would change us. The week after deciding to hire a PI felt like the longest of my life. Every time Mark left for work, I wondered if today would be the day I'd get the call with news I didn't want to hear. But when Peter, the private investigator and an old family friend, finally rang, his news was like a breath of fresh air I didn't know I was holding in. No signs of cheating, Anna. Just work and the usual errands, Peter reported over the phone, his voice a mix of professionalism and relief. I almost dropped the phone, a laugh bubbling up from somewhere deep inside. Are you sure, Peter? Like, really sure? Cross my heart. I followed him to the bar, a car service station, and even a grocery run. If he's seeing someone, he's got them stashed in the cereal aisle, Peter joked, trying to lighten the mood. The relief was palpable, washing over me in waves. When I shared the news with Emily, her reaction was a mix of relief and skepticism. So, we just trust him again? Emily asked, eyebrows raised, her tone laced with doubt. It looks that way, honey. Maybe we were just being paranoid, I replied, trying to convince myself as much as her. Emily shrugged, not entirely convinced, but willing to let it go for the moment. If you say so, Mom. But I'm keeping my eyes open. Life started to get back to normal after that. Mark's late nights didn't stop, but the suspicion had been lifted, replaced by a tentative trust. That is until I found the receipt. It was just lying there on the dresser, a piece of paper that felt heavier than it looked. An expensive handbag from a high-end store, the kind of purchase we'd talk about if it were for me. I waited for days for Mark to mention it, to hand me a gift-wrapped box with a sheepish smile, but it never came. Finally, curiosity and a hint of concern got the better of me. Mark, did you buy something from Luxe Couture recently? I asked casually over dinner, trying to keep my tone light. Mark nearly choked on his drink, coughing before replying. Yeah. A gift for a client. You know, bar business. I paid with corporate money. The explanation felt off, forced. I nodded, trying to shove down the doubt creeping back in. The ease that had settled over our house after Peter's call was cracking, the receipt a reminder that trust, once questioned, isn't easily rebuilt. The next morning, I made a decision. I couldn't let it go, not without more proof. I'm going to check our account, I whispered to myself, a plan forming. Just to be sure. But what I found only deepened the mystery. A large withdrawal, around the same time as the purchase of an expensive handbag. When I called the dealership about the supposed car repairs Mark mentioned, they had no record of him. I was trying to piece together a puzzle with half the pieces missing, and every new bit of information just made the picture more confusing. It was during one of these restless nights that my niece, Lily, dropped by unannounced. She was always a bit of a free spirit, bouncing from one thing to the next, and recently she had started working at the bar Mark managed. "Hey, Aunt Anna, just thought I'd swing by. You know, see how you're doing," she said, breezing into the kitchen where I was trying to drown my suspicions in a cup of tea. I couldn't help but notice the flashy new handbag she had slung over her shoulder. It was hard to miss, considering it looked exactly like the one from the receipt I found. "That's a nice bag, Lily." "Looks expensive," I commented, trying to sound casual. Lily glanced at her handbag and then at me, a flicker of something crossing her face, before she masked it with a smile. "Oh, this old thing? Got a great deal on it." You know me, always on the lookout for a bargain. The way she said it, too quick, too rehearsed, set off alarm bells in my head. "Funny," I started, leaning against the counter. "It looks just like one from Luxe Couture. Saw a receipt for something similar. Was wondering who it was for." Her reaction was immediate and telling. She shifted uncomfortably, her gaze darting away. "Luxe Couture? Really? No idea what you're talking about, Aunt Anna." "Like I said, got this on sale." The conversation felt like a dance, both of us circling around the truth. I wasn't sure what to believe anymore. "Right, a sale. Just curious, is all," I replied, my mind racing. The coincidence was too big to ignore, and my heart sank as I considered the implications. Later that evening, I shared my concerns with Emily, who had become my confidant through this whole mess. "Lily came by today, with a new handbag. The same one Mark supposedly bought for a client," I explained, the words tasting bitter. Emily's brow furrowed, her detective mind ticking over. "That's sketchy, Mom." "You think Dad?" I sighed, rubbing my temples. "I don't know what to think anymore, Em. It's like every time I get a handle on things, something else comes out of left field. We need to keep digging. This doesn't add up, and you deserve the truth," Emily said, her voice firm with conviction. The next day, I found myself looking at Mark, trying to reconcile the man I married with the person who might be at the center of all these secrets. "Mark, can we talk? There's something bothering me," I said, my voice steady, despite the turmoil inside. "Sure, Anna. What's up?" he replied, oblivious to the storm brewing. I took a deep breath, ready to dive into the heart of my fears. "It's about us, Mark. About trust and honesty. I just want us to be open with each other, no secrets." Mark looked at me, a flicker of something in his eyes before he masked it with a reassuring smile. "Anna, you know you can trust me. We've been through so much together." I wanted to believe him, to go back to the way things were before the doubts and the secrets. But the path to the truth was clear, and there was no turning back now. The discovery of the handbag and the lies about the car repairs were just the beginning, and I was determined to uncover whatever was hiding in the shadows of our life. The decision didn't come easy. Planting cameras felt like something out of a spy movie, not something a schoolteacher and mother of two should be doing. Yet, there I was, channeling my inner detective, driven by a mix of desperation and determination. Emily, ever my partner in this unwelcome adventure, helped me strategize. "Mom, make sure you place them where you'll get a good view. And the car one, it has to be really hidden," Emily advised, her tone serious, a stark contrast to our usual lighthearted banter. "Yeah, I know. It feels wrong, but I can't shake this feeling. I need to know," I replied, the weight of our plan settling heavy on my heart. The installation was easier than I thought. The staff at the bar knew me well, letting me in with sympathetic smiles, no questions asked. They probably thought I was surprising Mark. If only they knew. The car was trickier, but darkness and determination were on my side. As I tucked the tiny camera into its hiding spot, I whispered a silent apology to Mark, to us, for what our marriage had become. Then came the wait, a torturous blend of hope and fear. What if I was wrong? What if this tore our family apart for nothing? 3 days later, With Emily beside me for support, I played the recordings. The visuals were damning enough, but it was their laughter that cut the deepest. There they were, Mark and Lily, my niece, in what they thought was their private sanctuary, mocking the life we had built. "Can you believe Anna? So clueless, arranging for you to work here was the best thing she's ever done for us." Lily's voice, sharp and cruel, filled the room. Mark's laughter joined hers, a sound that once brought me joy now twisted into a knife. "Yeah, she's so busy playing the perfect wife and mother, she doesn't see what's right under her nose." The betrayal was one thing, but their disdain, their joy at my ignorance, was something else entirely. It shattered any lingering denial, leaving me with a clarity I wished I never had. I paused the recording, my heart racing, anger and hurt warring within me. Emily's hand found mine, her grip tight. "Mom, I'm so sorry. What are you going to do?" My mind raced. The man I loved, the father of my children, laughing at me with my own niece. The decision was suddenly clear. First, we're going to see a lawyer. Then, I'm confronting them. This ends now. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear, I was done being the fool. It was time to rebuild, for me and for my kids. The truth was a harsh mistress, but in its light, I found a strength I never knew I had. The moment I decided to confront Lily, I knew it had to be precise and calculated. I couldn't let my emotions lead, this was about getting the truth, no matter how ugly. So, I waited for her at a spot I knew she'd pass on her way home from work. The look on her face when she saw me was all the confirmation I needed. "Lily," I started, my voice steady, "I know everything. There's no point in lying anymore." Her facade crumbled instantly, tears welling up in her eyes. "Aunt Anna, please, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "Save it. I've seen the videos, Lily. You and Mark, laughing at me, thinking you got one over on me." "How long?" I demanded, my tone hard as steel. "It's been 2 years," she admitted, the words barely a whisper. I wanted to end it, I swear, but Mark, he threatened to fire me if I did. My heart sank, but I kept my composure. "You're telling me he manipulated you? Threatened your job?" I asked, making sure to record every word on my phone, hidden in my pocket. "Yes, he said he'd ruin me if I tried to break it off." I felt trapped, Aunt Anna. I didn't know what to do. Lily sobbed, her confession painting a picture of a twisted web of lies and manipulation. "And the private investigator? That was Mark's doing too?" I pressed on, needing to hear all of it. Lily nodded, wiping her tears. "Yes, he paid him off to lie to you, to make you think nothing was going on." "I'm so sorry, Aunt Anna." The recording was enough, more than enough. I turned off my phone and looked at Lily, seeing her not just as the woman who betrayed me, but as someone who'd been caught in Mark's manipulative grasp as well. Without another word, I turned and left her there, her sobs fading into the background. The walk home was a blur, my mind racing with the weight of Lily's confession and the evidence now in my possession. When I got home, I didn't hesitate. I confronted Mark with the evidence, his lies unraveling before his eyes. "It's over, Mark. I want you out. Now," I said, the finality in my voice broking no argument. He tried to explain, to apologize, but it was too late. I was done listening, done believing in the man I thought I knew. Emily and Alex stood by me, their support unwavering. "We're with you, Mom." "All the way," Emily said, her arm around my shoulder. Mark left that night, taking his lies and betrayal with him. As I watched him go, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. Relief that I was finally free from the deception, and sorrow for the love and trust one had lost. But looking at my children, I knew we'd be okay. We were stronger together, and no amount of betrayal could break the bond we shared. The road ahead would be tough, but with Emily and Alex by my side, I was ready to face it head-on. The moment I decided to get legal with Mark and Lily, I knew I needed someone tough, someone who wouldn't let them off easy. I found just the lawyer, a guy known for not pulling punches in divorce court. The day I walked into his office, I laid it all out, bare bones and raw. I want them to pay every last cent they owe for what they've done, I told him, my voice firm, betraying none of the turmoil that had been my constant companion these past weeks. The lawyer, a grizzled veteran of family law wars, nodded, his eyes sharp. We'll go after them hard. Your husband for support and your niece for damages. They won't know what hit em. Good. They think they can mess with my life and walk away? Not happening, I replied, the anger giving my voice an edge. The trial was a circus, each blaming the other like kids caught in a lie. Lily, tearful, tried to pin it all on Mark, saying she was led astray. Mark, ever the charmer, tried to twist the story, making Lily out to be the seducer. Sitting there, listening to them trying to outdo each other in deceit, I felt a cold satisfaction. They were unraveling, and the judge saw right through it. In the end, the judge laid down the verdict like a hammer. Both defendants will pay significant monetary compensation for their actions. Additionally, Mr. Mark will provide child support as mandated, he declared, his voice leaving no room for doubt. Lily's parents, red-faced and silent throughout the ordeal, paid up her part of the fine. Last I heard, they dragged her back to the countryside, hoping to hide their shame and her betrayal far from prying eyes. As for Mark, watching him realize he couldn't charm his way out of this one was a small, vindictive pleasure. The look he gave me, a mix of disbelief and resentment, was all the closure I needed. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt lighter than I had in months. It wasn't just about the money, though that helped. It was about accountability, about making sure they faced the consequences of their actions. Back home, I sat down with Emily and Alex, telling them everything. It's over. The judge made his decision. We can start to move on now, I said, my voice steady. The road ahead would still be tough, but with my kids by my side, and justice served, I felt ready to face it. Mark and Lily's betrayal would always be a part of our story, but it wouldn't define us. We were moving on, stronger and closer than ever. Life after the trial felt like waking up from a long, troubled sleep. The house, once filled with tension and secrets, now buzzed with a new kind of energy, one of hope and renewal. I found myself in the kitchen one morning, the sunlight casting a warm glow over the breakfast nook, with Emily and Alex chatting about their day ahead. Mom, you know what? I think we should paint the living room. Like, really brighten the place up, Emily suggested, her spoon pausing midair. I looked up, surprised by the suggestion, but then it hit me. She was right. You know, that's not a bad idea. What color are you thinking? Something bold. Maybe a sunny yellow or a bright blue. Make it feel new, she replied, her eyes lighting up with the thought. Alex chimed in. Can we get a new couch too? The old one's kinda, well, old. I laughed, the sound more liberating than I'd expected. I think we can manage that. It's time we made some changes around here, huh? Yeah, make it ours again, Emily said, a smile spreading across her face. As we delved into plans for redecorating, I realized this was more than just changing up a room. It was about reclaiming our space, our life, making it reflect who we were now, stronger, closer, and ready for whatever came next. Later that day, as I was sorting through some old boxes, I found a photo album filled with pictures of the kids when they were younger. Flipping through it, the memories came flooding back, not just of the good times, but of the recent struggles too. Hey, look at this, I called out, holding the album open to a page where Emily had chocolate smeared all over her face, and Alex was laughing beside her. They came over, and we all huddled around, laughing and reminiscing. We've been through a lot, haven't we? I mused, a hint of nostalgia in my voice. But we made it, Mom. We're still here, still a family, Alex said, leaning against me. And we always will be, no matter what, Emily added, her hand finding mine. The moment was simple, yet profound, a reminder of what we'd endured and overcome. It solidified my resolve to ensure our new beginning was built on love, laughter, and the unbreakable bond we shared. One evening, as we sat in our newly decorated living room, the vibrant walls embracing us in their warmth, I looked at my children and felt an overwhelming sense of pride and love. We did it, kids. We started over, and look at us now, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Yeah, we did, didn't we? Emily grinned, snuggling into the new couch. This is just the beginning, right, Mom? There's so much more to come, Alex said, his eyes bright with hope. I nodded, my heart full. Yes, this is just the beginning. Our beginning. And I have a feeling it's going to be amazing. Call me Mary. I remember walking into that party, feeling like a complete mess. It was just a couple of weeks after Jason, my then boyfriend, decided he had had enough of us. It's not you, it's me, he said, the same old tired line. So there I was, drowning my sorrows in a glass of cheap wine, surrounded by couples looking all happy and in love at our friends' get-together. I felt out of place, like a sore thumb sticking out in a sea of bliss. Enter Alex. I hadn't noticed him until he was right beside me, his sudden appearance pulling me out of my gloomy thoughts. Looked like you could use some company, he said, his voice smooth, with a hint of something I couldn't quite place. I remember looking up, ready to give him a piece of my mind, but the words died on my lips. There was something disarmingly honest in his gaze that made me pause. Company, or a distraction? I retorted, my tone sharper than I intended. I was in no mood for small talk or flirting. Whichever you need more, he shot back with a grin that was both infuriating and charming at the same time. It was the first time in weeks that I found myself genuinely smiling, despite my best efforts to stay miserable. We spent the rest of the evening talking about everything and nothing. Alex had a way of making the mundane interesting and the heavy stuff seem lighter. He didn't pry into why I was upset, nor did he offer any unsolicited advice. He just was there, making me laugh and forget about the heartache, if only for a few hours. As the party winded down, he offered to walk me home. It's late, and the streets aren't exactly friendly at this hour, he said, a note of concern in his voice that felt comforting. I hesitated for a moment, my mind screaming at me that it was a bad idea to walk alone with a guy I had just met. But then, looking into his eyes, I felt an inexplicable trust. Alright, but if you try anything funny, I swear I'll scream, I warned him, half joking, but also dead serious. Alex threw his head back and laughed, a sound that was unexpectedly delightful. Fair enough. I promise to be the perfect gentleman, he said, offering me his arm in an exaggeratedly gallant gesture. That walk home was the beginning of everything. We talked about our jobs, our families, our dreams, and our disappointments. Alex worked in IT, a geek at heart with a passion for old-school video games and a knack for fixing just about anything. I told him about my job in marketing, how I loved the creativity it allowed me, but hated the office politics. By the time we reached my apartment, I didn't want the night to end. There was something about Alex that felt right, like a puzzle piece I didn't know I was missing. Thanks for tonight. I needed it more than I thought, I admitted, feeling a twinge of vulnerability. Anytime, Alex said, his voice soft. And hey, if you ever need a partner in crime or just someone to vent to, you know where to find me. And I did. In the days and weeks that followed, Alex and I grew closer. Our initial banter turned into deep conversations, and the more I got to know him, the more I liked him. He was caring and attentive, always there when I needed a shoulder to lean on or a laugh to brighten my day. It wasn't long before our friendship blossomed into something more. Looking back, I can hardly believe how quickly things progressed. But with Alex, everything felt easy, natural. It was as if we were meant to find each other that night, to heal each other's wounds and build something new together. The day he asked me to be his girlfriend, he did so with a clumsiness that was utterly endearing. So, I've been thinking, which is always a dangerous thing, he started, scratching the back of his neck nervously. But I really like you, more than I've liked anyone in a long time. And I was hoping, maybe, you'd feel the same way? I remember laughing, not at him, but at the absurdity of the situation. After all the heartache and disappointment, I had found someone who made me feel alive again. I do, Alex. I really do, I said, and the smile he gave me in return was everything. The honeymoon phase, they say, doesn't last forever. But when the shift came for Alex and me, it hit like a freight train. I'd come home from work, bone-tired from the day's grind, only to find Alex sprawled on the couch, eyes glued to the TV, surrounded by a day's worth of mess. At first, I brushed it off, chalking it up to bad days or just a man's typical disregard for clutter. But as days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, the pattern held. One evening, after a particularly long day, I walked in to find the living room looking like a disaster zone. Seriously, Alex? I couldn't keep the frustration out of my voice as I kicked a path through scattered shoes and gym bags. You've been home for what, 4 hours? And the place looks like this? Alex barely glanced up from his game. What's the big deal? It's just a bit of mess, he replied, his tone dismissive. A bit? You call this a bit? My patience was wearing thin. I've been at work all day, and I come home to this. It wouldn't kill you to tidy up a bit, would it? He shrugged, a gesture that made my blood boil. I work too, you know. Why should I spend my free time cleaning? Because you live here, I shot back. It's called being an adult, Alex. Taking responsibility. His response was to turn up the volume on the TV, effectively ending the conversation. I stood there, fuming, as the realization sank in. This wasn't just about the mess. It was about respect, partnership. And right then, it felt like I was lacking both. One night, in a desperate bid for some semblance of order, I decided to tackle the kitchen. The sink was piled high with dishes, leftovers turning into science experiments. As I scrubbed and scraped, I couldn't hold back the tears. This wasn't the life I envisioned. This wasn't the partnership I signed up for. Alex found me there, elbow-deep in suds and misery. Hey, what's this? He asked, his voice softer now, laced with concern. I shook my head, unable to find the words. I'm just tired, Alex. Tired of feeling like I'm doing this all alone. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, I get it. I'll try to do better, okay? But trying didn't seem to translate into action. Days passed, and the pattern continued. Promises were made and broken, leaving me to wonder if this was our new normal. The man I married, the partner I thought I had, seemed more like a distant roommate, leaving me to question where we went wrong. It wasn't just the chores or the mess. It was the growing gap between us, the silent meals, the unspoken frustrations. I missed the man who walked me home that night, who made me laugh and feel loved. Now, I felt more like a caretaker than a wife, struggling to keep us afloat in a sea of indifference. Alex, we need to talk, I said one evening, the words heavy with a mix of dread and hope. This isn't working. We're not working. And I don't know how to fix this if you're not willing to meet me halfway. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the old Alex. I know I've been a jerk, he admitted, his voice low. I'll try harder, I promise. Promises. I wanted to believe them, to hold on to the hope that we could find our way back to each other. But as the days turned into weeks, and the mess remained, those promises felt more like echoes of a past we couldn't reclaim. The mess around the house grew worse, if you can believe it. It wasn't just clothes or dishes anymore. I found dirty socks in the fridge once. Yeah, you heard that right. In the fridge, next to the butter. I walked into the kitchen, ready to make some coffee, and there it was, the sock, chilling with the dairy. Alex, I yelled, holding up the offending item like it was evidence in a trial. Explain this. He wandered in, looking bewildered and not the least bit guilty. "Oh, must have dropped it," he said, as if that was a normal thing. "In the fridge? Really, Alex? What's next, shoes in the microwave?" My voice was dripping with sarcasm. I was beyond frustrated. He just shrugged, that infuriating nonchalance on full display. "Could you just chill? It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal?" I was fuming. "It's disgusting, Alex. Your stuff is everywhere. It's like living in a dumpster." He rolled his eyes, turning to leave. "You're making a mountain out of a molehill. Just pick it up if it bothers you so much." That was the last straw. "I'm not your maid, Alex. This is our home, not your personal landfill. I can't do this anymore. Something's gotta give." We glared at each other, the tension thick. It was clear we were at an impasse. I thought of reaching out to his mom, hoping maybe she could knock some sense into him. Desperate times called for desperate measures, after all. So, I called her. "Hey, Mrs. Thompson, it's me. I don't know what to do about Alex. The mess, the disrespect. I'm at my wit's end." There was a sigh on the other end. "Honey, Alex has always been a slob. I cleaned up after him his whole life. I thought he'd change for you." Her words were like a punch to the gut. "So, what, I'm just supposed to deal with it? Clean up after a grown man because he never learned to do it himself? It's just how he is. He needs someone to take care of him, like I did. Now it's your turn, I suppose." My heart sank. I didn't sign up to be his caretaker. I thought we were partners. She was sympathetic but firm. "You're going to have to talk to him, dear. Lay down the law or something." That's what I should have done years ago. Hanging up, I felt no better. If anything, I felt more alone. It was clear that Alex had grown up pampered and unaccountable. And now, according to his mom, it was my job to reform him. I confronted Alex again, armed with a new resolve. "We need to talk. This can't go on. I'm not your mom, and I'm not here to clean up after you. You're an adult, act like it." It was a conversation we'd had before, but this time I meant business. The ball was in his court now. I could only hope he'd finally play fair. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the distance between Alex and me grew wider than the Grand Canyon. Our home felt more like a battleground than a haven. The love and laughter that once filled our space were replaced by silence and tension so thick, you could cut it with a knife. One evening, as I sat at the dinner table alone, staring at the 2 plates of food I'd prepared, waiting for Alex to join me, the weight of our situation hit me hard. He stumbled in well past the time we usually ate, his face flushed, not from the cold outside but likely from a few drinks after work. "Where've you been?" I asked, my voice barely hiding my frustration. It wasn't just about him being late, it was about him being absent when he was right there. Alex shrugged off his coat and dropped it on the chair, not bothering to hang it up. "Out," he said simply, as if that one word was explanation enough. "Out where, Alex? With who?" I pressed on, needing something more than his non-answers. He sighed, a sound of annoyance rather than remorse. "Just out with the guys from work. You know how it is." I didn't, actually. Our once shared experiences and stories had turned into his life and my life, with a chasm between. We used to go out together, remember? We had friends, a social life together. Now, it's like you're living a whole separate life. He finally looked at me, his eyes not meeting mine. "I just needed some space, okay? You're always on my case about something. The cleaning, the dishes, being home on time. Can't a guy catch a break?" His words stung, not because they were entirely untrue, but because they underscored how far apart we drifted. "A break?" I echoed, my voice rising despite my attempt to keep calm. "I'm not your warden, Alex. I'm your wife. Or at least, I thought I was." partners give each other breaks, they don't take breaks from each other. Alex didn't respond. He just moved past me, heading for the fridge to grab a beer, as if that could solve everything. I watched him, a man I no longer recognized, and wondered how we got here. How did the man who once walked me home in the rain, who made me laugh until my sides hurt, become a stranger in his own home? "We're not okay, Alex," I said, the realization hitting me hard. "We're not okay, and I don't know if we can fix this." He paused, beer in hand, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of the old Alex, the one who cared, who fought for us. But then he shrugged, a gesture that had become all too familiar. "Maybe you're right. Maybe we're not okay." His agreement should have been a relief, an acknowledgement of our problems. But instead, it felt like a door closing, a silent confirmation that we were too far gone to find our way back to each other. I used to hate the idea of business trips, preferring the comfort of home over the sterile environment of hotel rooms. But as the rift between Alex and me widened, those trips became my sanctuary. Escaping the constant tension and the cold silence that had settled over our house was a relief. I'd brace myself every time I returned, expecting to walk into the aftermath of a tornado. Surprisingly, each time I came back, the house was spotless, which was the last thing I expected given Alex's usual disregard for cleanliness. The first couple of times, I was genuinely pleased, thinking maybe Alex had finally decided to pull his weight around the house. "Did you clean up all this?" I asked, unable to hide my shock and a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could turn a new leaf. Alex just shrugged, an all too familiar, nonchalant gesture that irked me. "Yeah, figured it's the least I could do," he said, but his tone was off, too casual, like he was brushing off more than my question. Something didn't sit right with me, but I pushed it aside, grateful for the clean space, but unsettled by the sudden change. It was after another trip, coming home to the same uncharacteristically clean house, that curiosity got the better of me. I decided to thank the person I thought responsible, his mother. "Mrs. Thompson, thanks for cleaning up the house." "I didn't expect it, but it was a lovely surprise," I said, hoping to convey my genuine appreciation. Her confusion was a slap in the face. "Clean your house? Dear, I haven't been over in months. Alex should be taking care of his own mess, not you or me," she said, her tone a mix of surprise and a bit of annoyance. My heart sank, and a cold realization crept in. Confronting Alex didn't take long after that. "Your mom didn't clean." "So, who did?" "Because it sure wasn't you," I demanded, my patience wearing thin, tired of the lies and the evasiveness. Alex squirmed under the pressure, his usual confident demeanor crumbling. "Look, it's not what you think," he started, but his voice was too hesitant, guilty. I pressed on, needing the truth more than I needed to breathe. "Who's been cleaning our house, Alex?" "Because it's obviously someone." The admission came too quietly, laced with shame. "It's someone I know, she's been helping out while you're away," Alex confessed, finally meeting my gaze, but all I saw was betrayal. "A someone you know? You mean a mistress? You're cheating on me, and her token of affection is cleaning our house?" The absurdity of the situation would have been laughable if it weren't so tragically pathetic. He tried to defend himself, the words fumbling out in a messy spill. "It's not like that. She's just a friend." "A friend who cleans and sleeps with my husband? That's a new one, Alex." My voice was bitter, laced with anger and a heartache that dug deep. I found out about his infidelity not through whispers or clandestine messages, but through a clean house. The irony wasn't lost on me, and though my heart was shattered, I couldn't help but marvel at the bizarre twist my life had taken. After all this, I decided enough was enough. Divorce was the only option left for me. Alex, surprisingly, didn't put up a fight. He let me go without so much as a plea for me to stay. Maybe that was for the best, or maybe it just showed how far apart we'd really grown. A few quiet months passed. I settled into a small, clean apartment that felt more like home than the house I shared with Alex ever did. Just when I started to enjoy my newfound peace, I got a call that turned my calm afternoon upside down. It was Alex's mom, and she was livid. "Come back to Alex this instant," she demanded, her voice sharp and filled with frustration. I pulled the phone away from my ear for a moment, confused. "Excuse me? Why on earth would I do that?" "Because he's a mess without you. His house looks like a pigsty, and I'm sick of cleaning up after him. His habits are driving me insane." I couldn't help but chuckle, though I felt a pang of sympathy for her. "And how is that my problem, Mrs. Thompson? I'm not his keeper anymore." Her voice softened, but the desperation lingered. "Please, he needs someone. His little cleaning lady ran off the moment she saw what a disaster he is." The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. So, his mistress left because of the mess? That's poetic, in a way. She sighed, defeated. "I just don't know what to do with him anymore." I took a deep breath, my decision clear. "Mrs. Thompson, I understand it's hard, but I've moved on. Alex needs to learn to take care of himself, and you shouldn't have to clean up his messes either. It's not your job, and it's certainly not mine anymore." There was a pause on the line, and for a moment, I thought she might argue further. Instead, she simply said, "I suppose you're right. I'm sorry for bothering you with this." "It's okay. I hope things get better for you both," I replied, not unkindly. We ended the call, and I sat there for a moment, reflecting on the strange turn my life had taken. From a cluttered house and a failing marriage to a peaceful, tidy apartment all my own. I couldn't help but smile at the thought. Leaving Alex was the best decision I'd ever made, not just for my sanity, but for my soul. 6 months of silence passed since I walked away from Alex and that chapter of my life. Then, out of the blue, I remembered I had left something important at his place. With a sigh, I decided to retrieve it, thinking it'd be a quick in and out. Standing at the front door of the house we once shared, I knocked, waiting for any sign of life. Nothing. I used my old key to let myself in, not prepared for the scene that greeted me. The house was a disaster zone, garbage everywhere, the air thick with the stench of neglect. "What the?" I muttered, covering my nose with my sleeve. I called out for Alex, but the silence was my only answer. Concern growing, I checked the house and found him in the bedroom, looking like he hadn't moved in days, surrounded by filth. "Alex!" I yelled, shaking him gently. He was barely responsive, a shadow of the person he once was. Without hesitation, I dialed for an ambulance and the police, explaining the situation as best I could. When they arrived, I stepped back, watching as they took over, taking Alex to the hospital. As I waited outside, Alex's mom arrived, her face set in a familiar stoic mask. The police explained her son's condition to her, and her response was cold, detached. "He's an adult. His choices, his consequences," she said, her voice devoid of any maternal warmth. I couldn't believe her indifference. "He could have died in there," I said, anger and disbelief mixing in my voice. She just looked at me, as if I was a stranger speaking a foreign language. "Not my responsibility," she stated flatly, turning away to talk to the officers. Standing there, watching the scene unfold, I felt a mix of emotions. Sadness for Alex, anger at his mother, relief that I had moved on. But above all, I felt a sense of closure, knowing that I had done the right thing by leaving when I did. This was no longer my life, my mess to clean up. I had my own path to follow, one that led away from this chaos and towards a future I was still writing. After everything that went down, I found out Alex was placed in a psychiatric hospital. Turns out, he had a progressive mental disorder that made him act the way he did with all that mess and his lack of cleanliness. Hearing that news hit me hard, way harder than I expected. Despite all the hurt and chaos, I couldn't help feeling sorry for him. So, I decided to visit him, even if his own mom couldn't be bothered. The hospital was stark and sterile, a far cry from the cluttered home we used to share. I met with his doctor, a kind man who seemed genuinely concerned for Alex. His condition's advancing faster than we hoped, he told me, his voice heavy with regret. At this stage, there's not much anyone can do except make sure he's comfortable and safe. I nodded, feeling a lump in my throat. And his mom? Does she come by? I asked, already knowing the answer. The doctor shook his head. Haven't seen her. It's tough, patients like your ex-husband, they need all the support they can get. I left the hospital with a heavy heart. Alex's mom hadn't changed a bit, still as cold and distant as ever. It was clear she had washed her hands of him, leaving him to face his demons alone. I couldn't help but wonder if things would have been different if she'd shown him a bit more love, a bit more care. As for me, life moved on. I found peace in my little apartment, a place I could call my own without any reminders of the past. I started anew, building a life that was entirely mine, free from the shadows of what used to be. My visits to Alex became less frequent, not because I didn't care, but because I realized it was time for me to let go and heal. I often thought about Alex, hoping he found some semblance of peace in his own mind. As for his mother, well, I hoped one day she'd realize the mistake she made in abandoning her son when he needed her the most. But that was a journey she had to make on her own.